Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew Weiss. I'm Vice President for Studies at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace in Washington, D.C. Thank you all for joining us today for the latest installment of a series we've called COVID and the Kremlin. We are delighted today both to have people joining us in the Zoom conference room as well as live on YouTube. And I hope that this will be very much a participatory conversation with two of Russia's most insightful, experienced, and knowledgeable media professionals. Our guests today are Elizaveta Osetinskaya is the founder of an important Russian media startup called The Bell, which publishes both in Russian and English, and has a range of both newsletters and online content. She's probably most known in the West as the former editor-in-chief of several of Russia's top publications, and being basically the preeminent figure in Russian investigative journalism. She was the editor-in-chief of Vedomosti, of RBC, and of the Russian edition of Forbes. Joining us as well from Moscow is Mikhail Zygar, who is a triple threat, both as a journalist, as a writer, and as a media executive. He was the editor-in-chief of TV Dozhd, or Rain TV, which was and still is Russia's only independent major TV network. He's also written several books, most notably All the Kremlin's Men, which was an in-depth look at insider views of how the Kremlin operates. So anyways, let's get started. We're going to speak, the three of us, for the first few minutes, and then hopefully bring others into this conversation. If you're following this on YouTube, please use the chat function on YouTube to get your comments in and your questions, and I'll bring those into the conversation. If you're in the Zoom room, just use the raise your hand function in the participants tab, and I'll recognize you in order. So anyways, welcome Liza and Mikhail. I think we're going to talk a little bit about tomorrow's vote, which is obviously getting a lot of attention in the West. But before we do that, I just wanted to ask Mikhail a quick question about the story that is dominating much of the conversation in Washington today, which is the suggestion that there was a secret effort by the Russian government to try to arrange for the killings of US servicemen and women in Afghanistan. And I don't want to put you on the spot to address whether that report is accurate, because I don't think any of us has seen the underlying reports, but I'm sort of curious, how big of a deal is this story in Moscow at the moment? How much attention is it getting? It's getting a huge amount of attention back here, but I'm curious if that's matched in Russian media reporting.
No, I haven't done a special research to find out how much of attention does this story have, but just at first glance, is zero. No one pays any attention to this story because everyone is really focused on the domestic issues. All the media are over obsessed with the voting process, because we have long time, a week of voting for the amendments to the Constitution, and that's the main story. Probably the first time ever the international agenda is nowhere.
Well, that I guess is sort of part of the pattern, right? We've seen this now since the crisis with the West began, where the international issues have become less urgent in Russia, and it's mostly looking inward. So let's talk about that looking inward for a minute. There is a vote that has been going on for about a week now, and then the in-person voting, the main voting day is tomorrow for a series of changes to the Russian constitution. The main and most important change is to nullify or reset the presidential term limits, and in theory allow Putin to stay in office until 2036. But what's weird about all of this is that the voting, at least the reports I've seen so far, really doesn't look terribly well organized. There have been a lot of descriptions of irregularities, of people saying they could vote multiple times, of polling places being set up in the back of people's cars. it doesn't look like it's the best example of a modern voting process. And I'm sort of curious, does that image of irregularities and of this thing not being something you would take seriously, the voting itself doesn't look, it looks hard to take it terribly seriously. Is that an impression that's widely shared, Mikhail, in Moscow? And then I'd be curious to get Elizaveta's reaction to that.
Everyone is discussing this this process, but I might say I should say that to my mind, and that's the opinion that is not broadly shared, but that's an opinion I've heard recently numerously, several times from those people we usually call decision makers, that this process is completely irrelevant and it's a disaster, and everyone understands that it's no longer important. The moment when this process has been started, it was launched back in January, February. It was very important for a domestic political agenda, because it was considered to be a way out of that deadlock that President Putin was facing. But after coronavirus lockdown, after all the problems we are having, after the crisis of Russian economy, and after everything that has changed, all those amendments to the constitution and the voting process has become really irrelevant, and it seems like no one really cares about it, because the real agenda is somewhere else. The process is organized in such a pathetic way that you are absolutely right. It's hard to take it seriously, and I probably that would sound a bit odd, but I guess that all those amendments and the referendum is going to be forgotten probably the day after tomorrow, because it's hard. It's hard to use that. It's hard to use the results of the referendum everyone is laughing at. So it's not going to be used as a proof that President Putin is loved by the population, because it's this referendum is not a real proof. Is not something that is considered to be legal.
So, Lisa, I'm curious how it looks from your perspective.
Yes,
the report we're getting from Mikhail is that people are laughing about this. From my standpoint, for Putin's announcement in January of desire to set the constitution on a new footing, and then the removal of the prime minister, and then the announcement of this plebiscite, it seemed for the last several months of the pandemic that this process was more important than coronavirus, and that the Kremlin was treating it as the most important urgent issue. Why has it been handled this way?
Let me thank you for having me, first of all, for having me here. And I'm really glad to see a lot of familiar faces, not faces, but signs on this screen. Let me add something on what Misha just said and on your question. Well, Misha said that that agenda of tomorrow's event is irrelevant for the most of the people, but I need to add one important detail and feature, except one man. And this man is the major figure in the Russian politics. This is Vladimir Putin. I think it's a very important procedure for him. And this is only my opinion. I don't know what is on his mind. But it's the only thing I can interpret, relying on what we were observing. And I think it's important, this popular vote is important for legitimacy of the whole of the procedure as a whole of changing the constitution, and of course changing the major thing of this constitution. And I also think that this trade-off between why the speed of this process is important and why things look so disorganized. I think uncertainty runs the process. We jumped into a completely uncertain world, and this is not only about Russia, but also about other countries and the world and the global politics. And no one knows what will happen afterwards. That's why it's so important and critical to complete this procedure as soon as possible. That's why such unpleasant, mistakes and typos are not so important for the system as a whole. So then I think the system understands that, well, changes in the constitution somehow will reach the important threshold. I don't know where this threshold is, but I think everything works to reach, to achieve this threshold. And I agree here with Misha that after this threshold is achieved, we'll have completely different agenda, maybe connected to the economy, maybe connected to epidemic, and maybe economic crisis, and so on and so forth. But it's very important for the power and the Kremlin to finalize the process of constitutional changes today, as soon as possible.
So let's focus on two of the issues that you just brought up, Lisa. And folks in the Zoom room, if you want to turn on your cameras, by all means, please turn them on. And we'll raise your hand using the participant button, and we can bring others into the conversation. But I want to focus on two issues that Lisa just mentioned. The first is legitimacy, and the second is agenda. On legitimacy, Putin gave an interview last week in which he said something pretty interesting. Up to now, before all this announcement on January 15th and the constitutional changes that followed, that the focus was on, will Putin leave in 2024, and who are the right combination of possible successors, and how would we know, and all of the uncertainty that created. So last week, Putin gave an interview on television, I believe, and he said, I'm not giving the exact wording of what he said, but he basically indicated, Putin was concerned as we got closer to 2024 that people would focus entirely on the succession instead of getting to work, and that we need to work. And so in some ways it feels like legitimacy was secondary to that question of not being a lame duck and of not having the succession swallow the oxygen in the Russian political system. Is that your understanding of what the main motivation was? Or was it that he needs legitimacy to be Sultan for life? My impression is if Putin wants to be Sultan for life, or wants to be the dog catcher in some Kolyma Oblast, he doesn't have to ask anyone's permission. He'll just do that and remain the most important player in the Russian system. But Misha, is that how it looks to you, Misha? Or is this idea that the public has to grant legitimacy more important?
I don't think really that everything is decided. And I think that all the changes that we're going to adopt tomorrow are not a guarantee that now we know the future. He's going to get the opportunity to be re-elected a couple of times more, but that doesn't mean that he has already decided. We know that he loves surprises, and that means that he, starting from tomorrow, he can surprise us any moment. He can run for the next re-election, or he still there is a minimal opportunity, like I would say 5%, but we still have this opportunity that that unexpectedly, and now it's going to be really unexpectedly, he would announce a surprising name as his successor. Even more, observing the situation from today's point, I would say that probably he could resign without waiting for his presidential term to expire, probably like in 2020, in 2022. I'm sorry, probably after the Duma elections or so, because these changes in the constitution that are going to be approved by the population are really vague. They do not draw the certain scheme of administration. They can create the state council, or they can postpone it. It doesn't make it more certain how they would change the scheme, how they would change the situation. But it gives him a lot of opportunities, and it makes the situation much more obscure than it is now, and that's a very solid ground for President Putin. He loves uncertainty for his inner circle, for the population, and he loves the situation when he is to decide what's going to happen next. But so I think the important thing that we know much less than we knew before.
So Lisa, Misha here's put his finger on something very important, which is Putin is creating options for himself. He's not deciding anything about when and how or to whom he might change his status. Is that your assessment as well, that this is mostly about pushing off decisions and creating new options for Putin down the road?
Well, here is the point where I completely agree with Misha, because as we see, this is a key opportunity expander in these constitutional changes. So what we see that Putin has all the options in his hands today, and he is not pressed by anything to decide before 2024. But this is the only thing that may affect his decision earlier. This is the economy, because this is a thing he obviously cannot predict, and no one could predict the crisis. No one could predict the scale of this crisis. And suddenly people realized that the volume of the Russian economy, the budget, and reserve funds, which seemed to be huge, just in few months realized to be not that huge. If we are talking about paying to people regularly, and when the government and experts started counting on how much money actually they do have to spread among the economy and economic figures, they realized that they don't have much storage of money. And if the situation goes in the wrong direction, Putin here should make decisions quickly. And I'm not a political expert, but as I understand, is just my general observation, that this constitutional changes give a lot of options for flexibility. For example, you can say that we can start re-elections because constitution has been changed. We can start new elections of the president, of parliament, and so on and so forth, just relayed on the fact that constitution has been changed. And this is definitely the expanding of opportunities. for the power, people in power.
And so when you say that, are you suggesting that part of the next phase of whatever politics is called in Russia might involve early elections, either to the Duma or for Putin to bring forward the date for the next presidential election?
Well, I would be very accurate, careful with, very careful with any predictions here. But if people in power and people around Putin and himself understand that the situation today in the economy and politics as a result, and stability is better today than it can be tomorrow, it could be a great stimul for earlier changes in the power and fixing this, continuing fixing this legitimacy of the next term of Duma or president, or both, just because today is better than tomorrow.
So
can I add just a couple of sentences to what Lisa has just said? I guess that we're going to see what's going to happen in autumn, because probably after this summer of uncertainty, we're going to see what's happening with Russian business and Russian economy this fall, and that's going to be the momentum of truth. And if the situation is really bad, probably the early elections are possible, because the worse the economic situation, the nearer are the elections, because they understand that for Duma elections or for the presidential election, they need to have large funds to organize it, to prepare it in a proper way, and to make sure that the right candidates or right candidate is elected. It costs. So the worse is the situation this fall, the nearer is the presidential, or I guess mostly we're speaking about the presidential election.
So Lisa brought up the idea of agenda, and if you had to ask me today, what is the agenda? I can't tell you what the answer is. You know, it has been for the last, now since the pandemic started, the regime has basically, acted as if the pandemic was, interesting, but not the most important issue in the world. There was a series of social protection measures that were rolled out to protect some vulnerable parts of the population, but not that generous compared to rescue plans that were implemented in the West. There has been now, since the beginning of the crisis, a recovery in the ruble. The ruble originally lost, about a third of its value, and now it's down about 12% or so. Oil prices have recovered somewhat. So oil prices are back at around $35, $40 a barrel, which is comfortable for the Russian budget. So the alarmism that was there in March and April seems now potentially to be misplaced. What we have instead is a more stagnant Russia, where people and average people know that the government system doesn't do that much to protect them. They kind of knew that already. They have an economy which is underperforming compared to other emerging markets because of all the familiar problems in Russia, like regulation, monopolies, et cetera, overdependence on commodity exports as the main source of national wealth. So I don't see an agenda coming out of the Kremlin that confronts any of these problems, Lisa. Am I being too critical, or is this what stagnation, kind of basically eternal stagnation, looks like?
Well, let me comment in several points on what you just said. First of all, stagnation is not that bad for the Russian government. Of course, people are always saying that we want growth, we want investments and so on, and we want entrepreneurships. But well, in general, people in government see that they can survive, political system can survive when there is a stagnation or just a stability, little recession. So, but if it a catastrophe, certainly political regime will not survive. And I think this crisis was a demo version of what could happen if pandemic will evolve in something constant and serious. We just had, for Russia, of course, for Russia, we just had a demo version. Why government didn't manage crisis differently? I think the Russian government doesn't have a capacity how to help people massively, because they don't have experience of doing so, and they don't have enough resources of doing so. And I spoke openly with the head of one of the Russian leading state banks, Открытие, Mikhail Zygar, who ran the government 20 years ago when the serious crisis, debt crisis happened in Russia. And he said, look, we are not that, our budget is not as big as in Germany. We don't have as much resources. We can't spend as much money as the West to cope with the crisis. So we need to make decisions to whom to help. And the Russian government knows how to help larger businesses and people working for the state, increasing a little bit pensions and state workers' salaries, especially people working for police and this Siloviki bloc, let's say. So they do what they know how to do. If they knew how to manage this crisis differently, if they could learn in the process, maybe they change their behavior. But well, they were lucky again. So it seems that this crisis is not that deep some people expected. For example, some alarmists among economists predicted. But we still don't know. For example, if Eastern and Western strong China economy and US economy stop the production chains and value chain creation, it will be the much more difficult and heavy consequences for the whole economies, and including the Russian economy. And the drop in oil prices will be much deeper and longer. So we don't know about the second wave. If we are lucky and second wave will not come, okay, we are on the safe side. And Russian economy goes back to its normal situation for the last years, to be very stable like a swamp, as Sergei Alexashenko wittily called it a few years ago. So Russian government, Russian economy is a swamp. It can't, drop from the mountain, but it can't grow fastly.
So Misha, I'm curious how you feel about this idea of the reason there was no big government response to the crisis. Is Lisa saying a lack of resources, a lack of state capacity, and also just frankly a level of complacency and inertia? I'm just sort of curious what that tells us about the way the system operates. I assume big state corporations are the employers, and people who work on the state budget, those are, right there, those two groups of people, that's probably 2/3 maybe of all workers in Russia. So as long as those people kept getting their salaries, they were not going to run out to the streets and say, we need change.
I really think that the point that that Liza has mentioned is very important, because Russian government really knows how to take money and really doesn't know how to distribute money. There is no such a tradition and no such a scheme. They are not very good at that, and so they have to invent the system to how they could distribute money to help business, because that's not their tradition to take care of any private companies, of any private business. But speaking about the agenda that has changed since the beginning of pandemic, I must disagree with you slightly, because I do not think that the changes of the constitution were the most important topic in Russia all of those months since January, since the moment when we first heard about them. For 2 or 3 months, they were definitely sidelined by the coronavirus, and unexpectedly, President Putin was really passive in during all that period, and he was like, it looked like as if he deliberately lost the initiative and tried to distance himself from the crisis, and unexpectedly or expectedly, Mayor of Moscow Sergei Sobyanin became the key player, the key political player in the country, as the leader who is fighting against coronavirus. And unfortunately to him, his activity and his readiness to be the face and the front man of that fight on a national level was not perceived well by Kremlin and the government. Many people thought that that's too ambitious of him. That looks like as if he would like to be a new prime minister, or he's trying to position himself as a possible successor. So all the Sobyanin's activity confronting coronavirus is really negatively responded by Kremlin, and politically he has become much weaker than he was before. But on a national agenda, definitely lockdown, coronavirus was and the potential problems of Russian economy, the bankruptcy of a lot of small businesses were the key topic in Russia during the recent months, except for the last couple of weeks when everyone has turned to the changes. And I think that the economic problems are going to dominate the agenda since Thursday, or probably since next Monday, and they are going to be the most important this fall. There are speculations that that all those resources Russian government is supposed to distribute are not that huge, and that all the money that have been saved for the crisis day are not there already. So probably we're going to witness rather problematic months for the business, for economy. And it seems to me that there is a certain level of understanding of the seriousness of this problem, even in the government. But they okay.
Let's talk about that passivity for a second and the flip side. For a long time, maybe 2 or 3 months during the pandemic, there was this idea out there that authoritarian leaders love COVID and they use it opportunistically to either clamp down at home on their opponents or expand their powers. And there was a lot of talk about various governments fitting that pattern. Russia, in some ways, matches more what we saw in the United States or in the UK, where the leadership was overwhelmed by all the demands and either handled them badly, which has obviously been the case in the United States, or basically just sort of said, it's not my problem, and kind of passed off responsibility to lower levels. In the United States, we've seen that. You've seen that in Russia, where a lot of responsibility was passed to lower levels. We have a question. I'm going to bring in questions now from colleagues who are in the room with us. One of them is saying, what is the main lesson that Putin takes away from the crisis? Is it that he should tighten the screws more, like we've had in China, where clearly there was a leadership team that was very activist and really worked aggressively to deal with the pandemic? Or is the lesson that, this kind of fatalism and passivity didn't really catch up with him? Like, he hasn't paid a big penalty for not taking direct responsibility. So maybe can we start with Lisa, and then Misha, I'd be curious to hear your reactions as well.
Well, this is an interesting question. First of all, when people talked about, the state that will watch all of us using the digital technology, was, as always, exaggeration of the organizational power of the Russian state. I think they are also humans. And for them, it was very hard to manage this uncertain new reality and to understand how to behave, because they felt that if they put too much pressure on people, and this is one of the reasons, I think, why quarantine ended so quickly in Russia. They realized that if they push people too hard to stay at homes, the economy will not survive, people will not follow the rules, and the government will not be able to control it properly. That's why they lift some restrictions very quickly and actually didn't punish people massively. So maybe only in the downtown of Moscow, streets were really empty. In the suburbs, the situation was very different, and people didn't take these restrictions very seriously, and they continued more or less their regular life. And here, I think the key lesson is that, well, it's again hard to understand what is in the Putin's mind. I don't know, but I think the controlling power is actually less than it seems to be, and also the power of the government to solve any situation, any crisis with the money is very, very limited. And the wealth that Russia accumulated during these years of growth and high oil prices, this wealth is not that huge to cope with real serious crisis.
Misha, can you talk a little bit about the lessons of the crisis? And I know you've put yourself in Putin's head in your book, All the Kremlin.
No, never.
So if you could pretend to put yourself in Putin's head, that would be great. And for example, in China, we saw the authorities use all sorts of new technology to really monitor the population through facial recognition and all sorts of efforts to basically, keep very close control over a huge population and manage the pandemic. In Russia, as Lisa says, it was much looser, and the restrictions are now basically totally relaxed now. So I'm curious, is the lesson that the Kremlin should take away from this that they don't need to tighten the screws, and that there's enough inertia in the system and enough, how do I say this, expectations are low from the population, that the regime doesn't need to do very much to keep its position and keep the current arrangements intact?
First, I always feel paralyzed when I'm supposed to imagine that I'm living inside Putin's head. I think the word inertia that you mentioned is very important, and it's very symbolic about everything that's happening in Russia. We're having this mess about the changes of the constitution because it's inertia, because they have created something in the beginning of this year, and they cannot change their plans. They cannot invent anything new, any new political agenda, and that's why thanks to this inertia, we've got the voting process. I really don't think that there was a huge plan in Russia to try to use the pandemic to establish a Big Brother system and to watch every Russian citizen, because normally they've never needed any pretext to tighten the screws, but these days they don't have any opportunity to provide all those surveillance systems, to provide all those new equipments, new techniques. The system was not prepared for the pandemic. They didn't have a plan. They really were expecting a lot of people to become ill, and that's why probably President Putin was not that active, because he never wants to be a person who's bringing bad news. He loves good news. He is the one to announce that that mission accomplished. He is not the man who loves to say that we are under attack. So he appointed Mayor Sobyanin as the man to bring bad news. He was the man to announce the victory. But there was no strategy what to do and how they could use the pandemic to make their power like more safe. They step by step they are unveiling new dangers and new potential problems that could be caused by the pandemic. But it's very I'm never overestimating the wisdom and might of President Putin and Kremlin administration.
I just want to add on this point. Well, objectively, frankly speaking, no one in the world was ready to this crisis, and no one had strategy and clear vision, because people didn't face situation on such a level when the whole value chain and travel schedules were just ruined in few weeks. But what I think also Russian government should learn from this lesson, that people really quickly get angry. And in some provinces of Russia, for example, in Dagestan, people became angry very easily, and they pushed back. And despite all the TV shows, you know, all the banners on websites, all these propaganda things, when people feel fear and threats to their families, they react immediately. And this is the thing the government should avoid by any cost, despite any cost, because otherwise political system just will not survive these events.
So various people are raising their hands. Let's bring a couple of other folks into this conversation. I'm going to turn first to Dan Goldberg. Dan, can you see us and turn on your camera? And you should be unmuted. Or
can you?
We can hear you, Dan. No, we can't actually. Hold on. Are you unmuted, Dan? Try it now. Okay. One more time, Dan, see if you can get it unmuted, and then if not.
How about?
Gotcha, Dan, go ahead.
Okay, great, thank you. My question is for you. I'm puzzled by the logic behind your statement that the worse the economy, the sooner the elections. That suggests that Putin in an economic crisis would feel he needs some kind of a new mandate and that he doesn't have the power now to take charge and move out. And given the, you know, the risk of a lousy turnout in another election, I am puzzled by what the is. You meant something else entirely as the logic for your comment.
Lisa, did you hear that okay? Did you understand the question?
Yes, my logic is that if crisis comes, tomorrow will be worse than today. That means that today you still have resources in hands, and you can persuade people by sharing some fraction of these resources, like increasing pensions, doing some social payments like for kids and so on and so forth. You can turn them on your side and call them to vote for you. When in the future, uncertainty increases, and you don't know what's going to happen. And how would you be able to manage this situation successfully in the future? So it's like the most common economic rule: money today is better than money tomorrow, because you don't need to pay for, I mean, the cost of money.
So Misha, I'm curious what your reaction to all this is. Is that in general, my impression is that a lot of political oxygen has been sucked out by the referendum or plebiscite or whatever you want to call it. And not a lot of attention has been focused on who's going to lead the government. It seemed that Mishustin had a bad crisis and that the prime minister was overshadowed as a result of how he got sick, and then he just has not really returned to the front of the political scene. Does that mean there is a vacuum in the leadership circles right now? And is sort of coming back to Dan's question, what benefit is there to creating more political turbulence at a time when that vacuum is pretty obvious?
I think that the political vacuum is not connected to anything that Prime Minister is doing, because Prime Minister is a special figure in Russia. He is supposed to be not visible, not active. He's supported to be a low-level figure, not to overshadow President Putin. So I think that Prime Minister Mishustin did his best, and I I guess that President Putin is really satisfied with him, unlike he's unsatisfied with Sobyanin. But speaking about the political agenda and political vacuum, I guess there is a problem because the key player in Russian political system is the Kremlin administration, not the government. And the referendum and the referendum is a creature of Sergei Kiriyenko, who is the chief political architect in today's administration, and that's probably his problem. And we started our conversation with Liza that it might not be important for the population, but it's important for President Putin. I'm afraid President Putin is not going to be satisfied with the results, as he's probably not really satisfied with the process, because it doesn't look like an overwhelming support of his endless rule. And I guess that Mr. Kiriyenko is going to be blamed for that. And there is a certain vacuum of new ideas in Kremlin administration, and I think that's the problem. They don't have a plan how to react, and they don't, as everyone in this world doesn't have a plan how to respond to coronavirus. Russian government and Russian authorities, Kremlin, has not created new political agenda and has to use the old changes to the constitution as a substitute for something new.
Thanks, Misha. Let me bring in John McLaughlin next. John, I think your microphone's turned on. Please go ahead. Try again, John. I think you need to, for some reason, I think you're still muted. We can't hear you. Okay, now we can.
There you are, yeah. Thank you, Andrew, and thanks to our guests for being here. I had a question about data in Russia on the coronavirus. Andrew correctly pointed out that our government here has not done a good job managing our crisis. And the one thing I would say is that largely through our media, we at least have an understanding of its magnitude, so that daily we can see how many cases exist in our states. And right now, we're in bad shape because at least 20 or more of our states have cases going up. And in some cases in the South, it is now once again reaching catastrophic proportions. People say this is not the second wave, this is the continuation of the first wave, and the second wave may hit in the fall. So my point is, we at least have an understanding of how bad the problem is that's not being managed. So I'm wondering, in Russia, given the vast nature of the country, do you and other citizens have a sense for the contours of and magnitude of the coronavirus problem, particularly outside of Moscow, and that is across the country, as to how bad it is, or perhaps not? We do have some states here where there isn't much of a problem, so it isn't universally catastrophic. So I'm wondering, what is the public understanding of the problem in Russia?
Can I clarify one thing? How many coronavirus cases do you have in the United States?
I don't have the number at my fingertips, but it is
approximately 2 million, I think.
Yes, very high, and we've lost about 117,000 citizens to it.
So Russia has about 650,000 cases officially. So giving the proportion between our populations, it seems kind of be okay. 1 million would be more, it seems like be more statistically relevant, accurate, but this is not 10 times less or 10 times more. It seems like to be within the range. Maybe it not exactly correct by the last number, the last ill person, but it seems to be in the same range as in the US. Well, there are some
So Lisa,
ugly.
we're just, you know, we're bumping up against the end of our time. So if you can just kind of make it really tight, we're gonna run out of time in about 2 minutes.
So I think we have basic understanding about how many cases we do have. We have some bad situations in medicine itself, and a lot of cases with doctors and medical staff died. That is very unpleasant and shame fact, which I'm very sorry about. In the rest, I think it's approximately in the same range that in the world. Not completely, not in the best situations, but not in the worst.
Well, thank you. It sounds like you have data at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's questions, John, about the accuracy of the data, but that's that's been a perennial issue in Russia, not new. So anyways, I apologize to everyone. I think we do need to be mindful of the time constraints. We've tried to keep these sessions tight to exactly an hour. This has been great for me. I encourage everyone who's watching this on YouTube to keep an eye out for the next session of COVID in the Kremlin. Deeply grateful to Mikhail Zygar and Elizaveta Osetinskaya. I encourage everyone who's watching this as well to sign up for the Bell, either in Russian or English, which is really an absolutely phenomenal media product. And so anyways, again, thank you all for being with us today. Everyone, please take care of yourselves and your families. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.